Hi Abe, nice to meet you. I'm Tom. Thanks for talking with me.
Of course. Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. I got a chance to see Magpie at South by Southwest as one of my last films. It wasn't with the big audience, but it was still a great experience, and it's been sitting with me a lot. And I was actually thinking that the Ben character in some ways reminds me, not with not all the serial killing and all that, but of your character and based on a true story. And I'm wondering how you think these people would get along, or if, he would just kill Ben right away and just get it over with so they didn't have to spend time together.
He probably would kill, but I mean, both of them suffer from levels of toxic masculinity, I guess. So as soon as you put two wannabe alphas in a room, I think it would get ugly pretty quickly. And given my character's uh, 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 love of murder, I guess it wouldn't end well for Ben.
Ben doesn't have quite as much to back. Like you can't really back
Oh,
up what he
I don't
is.
think Ben would make it too far.
Well, I did just speak to Daisy, and she said the two of you have a very happy marriage, which doesn't really explain a lot of how this film came about. But I'm more curious about what made you want to write something.
It's good to hear that Daisy says we have a happy marriage. I agree with that. And we did have with this film coming out being our first of many. We have plans to make many more together. We did think this is funny that this is our first one because really it does focus on a very bad marriage. Um, but what made me want to write it, ultimately, I don't know how much Daisy told you, but I've been writing for quite a few years now, and I have a lot of very different scripts and genres and ideas that are in various stages of development. Some are very far down the way with producers and directors attached and even actors attached. Some are brand new ideas in my mind. Daisy is the first person I send anything to. I not only respect and admire her as an actor, but as a creative person and an artist. And I love her view on things. She doesn't ever sugarcoat anything. If she doesn't like something, she does tell me. And I've given her drafts of things before that I've written for her that she said, don't like it, doesn't appeal to me. I don't understand what you're trying to do here. And we have that it's I'm really proud of our dynamic in that way because I never take that personally. I know that she's always just trying to help me realize what I can do better. Um, but so she's always read my scripts and she is very enthusiastic and encouraging of my writing. And so when she had this idea for Magpie, she told me it. She got off a plane, was jet lagged in the car. I was driving us back from Heathrow in London, and she told me this idea. And she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think that's a fascinating dynamic. I feel like I've seen or read something around that, but never quite as specific as that. I think it's really interesting." And so she asked me if I'd write it. And I think just the idea of collaborating with her, she's one of my favorite actors in the world. And she's my favorite person. So I thought this could only be a wonderful thing. And it has been.
Do you consider playing this part of Ben?
There was a thought. I mean, if I'm honest, every part I write, I imagine myself playing. Even Annette, I thought I could have a go at Annette. I kind of imagine myself in all the characters that I write. And once I've worked out a narrative and I've written the first sort of draft or two, and I'm happy with the structure, what I tend to try and do is go through and do a pass of the script from each character's point of view. And it doesn't matter how small that character is; they could have one line, they could have 1,000. And I try and just make sure that their intention and motivation and dialogue is as truthful to the character that I have in my head. So, of course, when I did my Ben pass, I say the lines out loud and I try and I was writing him, I suppose, given that he's one of the only male characters in the piece, close to the dialogue that comes out of my mouth. He's also a writer, which I could relate to his frustrations and ambitions and ego and things like that that he's battling with. But in all honesty, no, I don't think it was ever. I never really wanted to. I think, given that this is Daisy and I's first one, we wanted to focus on it as a story and have that be the focus instead of this couple are they've written it and directed it and or produced it and they're also acting in it. I thought that was one level too far. I think for an audience, we wanted an audience to come in and just be able to witness the story instead of seeing a real life couple on stage on set playing a real life couple, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about Ben as the only real male in the film because he's such an outsized influence on the women around him. I mean, I know that personally for me. I mean, I was saw this at a film festival after being away from, my wife and infant for 9 days, and I said, "There's no way I'm nearly as bad as this guy," but I did not feel great about myself coming out this film. I was like, "Okay, it's time to wrap up and and go home." But Ben is such an interesting character because you have to think you're supposed to like him, but you can't really like him. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question because his character, I think, went through the most um, rewrites, I guess, because to plot that, you have to believe that this man, that Annette married this man and loved him. They have to have had a past of love. They have two children together, and one of them is a baby. So it's not been too long. They have to have a believable history together. So he can't be a total monster from the off. But at the same time, we were aware that we wanted to make a fast-paced, quick movie. We didn't want it to be a 2.5 hour picture. It's a 90-minute film. And so in that space of time, you need an audience to also hate this guy enough that when what happens to him, they are wanting that, willing that actively to happen. So he couldn't be too. So I kind of wanted to. I didn't want to paint him as like a comic villain, and I knew that given Shazad is a dear friend of mine, given his um, effortless naturalism as a performer, I knew that he would be able to carry some what could be on the page is quite sort of stereotypical. Like he's almost a pantomime villain at points. Um, I knew that he'd be able to undercut that with his naturalism. Um, but I also so I read there's this brilliant book called The Adventure. Oh no, it's the Ed Zwick book, Hits, Flops, and Other Illusions, that I've just finished reading. And he writes that you should start your story as late as possible. And I think that's what I was trying to do with Magpie, that it would be easy to start off seeing a beautiful, wonderful, flourishing family that by the end of it has been attacked and crumbled. But I thought, actually, what's interesting me is like we're finding even in the first couple of scenes, there's fractures. It's not quite working. And you're seeing how they have managed to keep this marriage afloat. But it's on thin ice. And I wanted to play with that energy straight away that an audience, even in the first scene, hopefully knows something's not right here and lean in, hopefully going, oh God, I think something isn't going to go too well, if you know what I mean.
Definitely, and I think that what sticks with me early on is the scene where she goes to meet up with an old colleague and has to bring the baby with her because he couldn't be bothered to think that, oh, she's trying to do something, because in his mind it's like, well, I'm doing this. I'm doing the noble thing, taking our daughter to work. So you have to take care of the baby. And when he has to stay home, so I couldn't get anything done. I was with the baby. And I think those are very relatable moments that, as you
Yeah.
said, they don't come at the beginning, but they're easy to come by later.
Yeah, and I think that things like that are, as you say, that's a very relatable, understandable. I have children, but like I know a lot of people who do, and that thing of who's taking the kid is an everyday occurrence, and it's hopefully something that a lot of an audience member can at least relate to, or if not relate to, understand it. Um, but there's an amazing article I read in the New York Times. I forget the writer, and he talks about how he destroyed his marriage through paper cuts. It wasn't he had an affair. It was these little paper cuts of just going. He forgot that she had a meeting. So, and he forgot to tell her that the babysitter wasn't ready. So, all of these things lead to the fact that this thing that's really important to her, which is going to meet an old colleague and perhaps getting her career back up and running, is completely undermined and destroyed because she has to have the baby. And it's because her husband didn't think of her, and he didn't think of her and go and have an affair. He just didn't think of her in the moment. It's those little paper cuts which every couple, it doesn't matter who you are, has to be aware of, that there are concessions to be made in a relationship, but also the generosity that one has to constantly think, I am a team, I am a team, I am a team, not I am me, they are them, and we're doing this life separately together. So I'm glad you picked up on that, because took a lot of like little moving puzzle pieces. What can he do almost passively to actively affect and derail her life?
On the note of puzzle pieces, I am incredibly impressed with the construction of this film and how things end up, which I don't want to reveal for anybody because they haven't seen it yet. But did you know where the film exactly where it was headed the entire time?
No, I did. I knew. I said quite early on in the process before I'd finished it, I was really influenced by and intrigued by the film. Is a lot of is to do with the misconception and the projection we have onto people and the assumptions we make of them, and playing with that perspective and that perception. And I wanted to that we don't only underestimate and overlook characters like Daisy's character, even Shazad's character, and Matilda Lutz, who plays Alicia. We overlook all these characters and what they're capable of. I wanted to take that further and make an audience underestimate the narrative itself, and push that as far as we could. So I knew that I wanted this kind of Christopher Nolan-esque memento type. Oh my God, the whole time, you had to be very careful not to ruin the movie. The whole time I thought I was watching this film, but actually I'm watching this film. Now, as soon as I said that to Daisy, and at that point, Kate Solomon, our co-producer, had come on board. As soon as I said that to them, they went, "That's this is going to be tricky." And I said, "Yeah, but come on, let's go for this." We had this huge table, and I would write out the narrative structure as it did happen, and the narrative structure of what we will show the audience, what we will hide from the audience. And it was pretty tricky because the whole time I had to be like, right, at the point where Ben does this, Annette is doing this, and that's because of this, and she'll do that in spite of this. And all along, keep an audience's understanding that they think that they're watching this almost romance play out between Ben and Alicia. And is Daisy's character even aware of this infidelity? And if she is, what's she doing about it? Kind of, it took a lot of work, man. It was, but it was really enjoyable work. It was me just up at 4 a.m. every day with these post-it notes, scratching my head, moving things around, adding things, taking them away. And that process didn't really end up until even in the edit of the movie. You know, we were still in the edit, Daisy, myself, Sam, our director, Chris, our amazing editor, and Kate. We were all still going, hang on, if we show that, maybe an audience will guess. And then we wanted them right up to the last minute. I wanted an audience to think something's not right here, but I don't know what it is. That's the place I wanted an audience to be. Um, and that was just a fine tuning moment. And we had tester audiences, and showed it to people who knew nothing about the film and said, "Did you guess what was going to happen? Did you understand? Did you care?" So it was a balancing act that went not only into my writing process, but all the way through shooting, all the way through the edit too.
Well, I think it worked very well. And like you said before about, you have to start at, however far into the story. I like that it ended exactly where it did because not having time to really process and just be like, oh, that's it. Like, I think is really great. And I remember leaving the theater and I was like, okay, whatever. I liked the movie, but even if I hadn't liked the movie, I feel like I would just be so, stuck on that last thing. And I like that. I think that's fun because I think a lot of people might be tempted to add on an epilogue or another half hour, all these long movies these days. And I like that. It was just like, nope, we're done,
Yeah.
go home and think about
Always
it.
leave them wanting more, right? And I think that was, yeah, we wanted, and Sam, our director, he understood that too. He kept talking about the elegance and how lean we want this film to be. We don't want any fat. We just want it to be really lean like a dart, that an audience is going, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then just at the moment you go, "Oh my God," and it's over. That's kind of the experience we wanted. So that, Daisy and I talked about this even before we started work on this. We said when we wanted to start making a film together and make a production company together, we said we want an audience to have an enjoyable experience, even if you're watching something that could be perceived as deeply traumatic or upsetting or challenging. We want the experience to be an enjoyable one, so that when an audience leaves, we wanted that buzz of, like, as soon as the credits come up, you want people to go, "Oh my God, did you see that coming?" And so far, the audiences that we've sat in with and experienced it with, even in the editing process, that happened. So it was the thing that we're so happy and excited to share it with audiences, because we think it's super fun, and the audiences we've shared it with have responded in exactly the way we wanted them to.
Well, I wish you plenty of luck and looking forward to all your next projects.
Thank you so much, Abe. Great talking to you, and thanks for taking the time.